Hello, it's me, and we are going to continue the series brutally and quickly because I need to knock this out. Um, yeah, I don't know if I should talk about it, but it's like I've had issues. I have high blood pressure. I'm all woozy, and I'm gonna have to see the doctor and all that kind of shit. Um, so I don't know. I'm pretty fucked. I'm a pretty unlucky person. You know, I I suffer a lot for no good reason. I have a lot of issues. Uh, you know, I'm fat. I have high blood pressure, autistic, depression, all kinds of mental issues, anxiety. Um, I'm somewhat deaf. I have all kinds of issues. And so I don't know how long I'm gonna last. Honestly, I sometimes feel it's the end. But yeah, uh, it's just some of us are unlucky, you know. But I think it's meant to be that way. That's the only way to glean any kind of uniqueness out of you. So, when Nietzsche says, that which does not kill you makes you stronger, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's true. It's brutal, but it's true. Um, the only way to make art is to suffer. The only way to get some deep insights is to suffer. So I see it as a kind of positive, as a kind of boon. Because because I'm willing to sacrifice myself for a cause. That's funny because that used to be normal. People had no problem sacrificing themselves to a cause that they believed in. You know, I remember seeing a picture um, of this Chinese soldier, a guerrilla warrior. It was a 24-year-old Chinese woman, and she was smiling in the picture, and behind her was a bunch of several Japanese soldiers, and they were gonna kill her. They were gonna, bayonet her right after the picture was taken. But she had been raped, all kinds of stuff, and she stood there with her arms folded, um, smiling. You can find the picture if you Google the keywords, right? Um, I hope I don't have to explain it, right? But I feel that a lot of people are so stupid they can't even like put two and two together. It's like a lot of people couldn't even find the picture that I just mentioned on their own because they're like, I can put the keywords together. I'm too stupid to put the keywords together, So I don't know. Every time I see something, I just see the failure in it. I see well, you put, that was that word you used was misspelled. It was redundant. It's you need a comma there. You need a semicolon or something. I'm really judgmental. But then I can apply that to myself as well. So I do it to myself as well. But anyway, the point is, people used to die for the causes they believed in, and I just thought, man, that's so depressing that people no longer do that. It's you can't even. They just bow down and play the game without putting up a fight. It's so normal. Go to school, get a job, and you're seen as a lunatic if you don't want to play that game, if you resist. as I've resisted pretty much my whole life. Always dropping out of schools, not taking a job, leaving a job. And it's so annoying because that's tangled up with my mental illness and conditions that I can't make a clear argument because, for me, one reason why I resisted all this is because I just couldn't stand it, literally. Physically and psychologically, I couldn't stand it. And so I'm not really the best representative of anarchy or individualism, because every time I make an argument, you can just say, oh, that's just because you're autistic. And I can't really separate the two, Can't really separate the cheese from the sandwich, But I do believe in this. I always believe that, like Chomsky, that having a job is renting yourself to a master. It's embarrassing, Calling someone else a boss is embarrassing. There was a black guy on YouTube who would always say that. I don't remember his name at all. But, one thing I've been thinking about is the renegades of like, there's always a series of people that are special in this world. Luffy from One Piece or something, that kind of spirit. Philosophers, poets, people on YouTube, take your pick. We all have these special people that we think are special anyway, but I think I can see it objectively that some people are special, and they're special because they have authenticity, because they're honest, and they have a depth to them that logic cannot capture. I can't put it in logic terms. So reason always fails. Reason doesn't really penetrate very deep. Reason is not good enough, But I've been thinking about these people, I feel Blaze. I don't necessarily like all these people. One sec. Sorry, interruption. So yeah, I was just mentioning Ethel Blaze, and he's a curious case because he actually died close to where I live, in Hungary, in Budapest, which is my country. And so I was just thinking about how there are all these kind of geniuses out there, people that really have or had something special. Just the other day I was looking at this guy who was called Killing or Kissing Oscar, and he was this kind of QM, rationalistic guy who believed in open individualism, and he was a kind of a schizophrenic kind of guy, I guess, pretty removed from reality. And I was also thinking about this guy called Renegade Number 1, who was one kind of a black pillar. And so I don't agree with him, by the way. In one of his videos, he said, if you're a woman watching this video, then fuck you. Well, I think you can easily reverse the statement and say, if you're a man watching this video, then fuck you, But nonetheless, these renegades, these outside intellectuals, have a kind of charm. I think they have genius, and genius is short-lived. because all three of these guys have died long ago. They were all in their mid-20s, I think, about. And they all died of, checking out of the game. And that's what happens when you're a genius. Again, I don't necessarily agree with these guys. I'm not a black pillar. I don't particularly care about QM. Open individualism sounds like bullshit to me. And I no longer call myself an ethicist. But clearly these guys are genius. Brilliant people. But genius doesn't last very long. They rarely make it past their 20s or their 30s. And there are many of these people. Osamu Dazai, who's one of my favorites. Carlo Mikkelstatter, another one of my favorites. Dazai was 38 when he checked out of the game with his mistress drowning in a river. Carlo Mikkelstatter is my favorite philosopher, and he wrote his PhD thesis, sent it to the university, then took a gun and shot himself at age 23. Mark Fisher is another one of my favorites. Just yesterday I was listening to him, and he drew this interesting distinction between free will and agency. Doesn't believe in free will because he's a Spinozist, but doesn't mean there's no such thing as agency. But I don't agree with him either, because he's too much of a commie. He's too much of a collectivist. I'm an anarchist. I'm an individualist. So he was saying, like, creativity is a social function, and he disputed this idea that children are free, and said that it's actually when you take control of yourself, that's when you become free. Another Spinozist idea. So he's a kind of an apologist for society. He loves being a collectivist. He defends the idea of society. And I understand that. I just disagree. I think that society is evil, and it's what comes before society that's the real deal. But the point is that these geniuses rarely last very long. George Carlin and Bukowski, two more favorites. They lasted very long. They lasted till the early 70s, but no more. Chomsky is the only genius that I like, who's really old, but he made it to like 94 before he had a massive stroke. Slavoj Žižek is another one. He's still going. But overall, genius doesn't last very long. They have this quote of, I don't know whose quote it is, but it says that, the brightest flame dies out the quickest. I think that's true. Geniuses are born into a world that isn't theirs, that is beneath them, that they can't make sense out of. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out, that, I've been thinking about this, but I need to get into the subject of this video. So I need to somehow collect my thoughts. Give me a sec. What I really want to talk about in this video is supposed to be, I was supposed to talk about society. And my ideas about society. But that requires some understanding of what the individual is. So, see, I believe that the individual is of paramount importance. And I do believe that despite what's, pro-society people would say, like Mark Fisher, that, this idea of the noble savage is true in the sense that it's before you get civilized that you're good. After you get civilized, you're bad. But this idea that if you're not civilized, you're a savage, is itself propaganda. Because those are not the two options. In fact, it's usually when people are civilized that they become savages. Just take a look at Nazi Germany. Just take a look at Israeli society today. It's a genocidal society. But all society is filled with hate, division, dishonesty, inauthenticity, selfishness, nepotism, nationalism, racism, all kinds of bigotry you can imagine. And so it always struck me as really bizarre that it's the pre-civilized person that is seen as a savage, and not the post-civilized person that is seen as savage. Because by all available evidence, it's the pro-civilized, the post-civilized man that's really dangerous. And so I just find that bizarre. We should remember that the only reason why the Holocaust even happened is because of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment created the idea of race and race science, which is bullshit. And increasingly it's seen as bullshit by scientists. That it doesn't tell you much about anything, which is of course obvious when you think about it. But it required race science to create slavery based on race, which is the worst form of slavery. So despite what US Republican apologists want to say, the US-based slavery system was probably the worst, because precisely because it was based on race. That's particularly heinous, right? There was other forms of slavery in different places of the world, like the Arab slave trade, and so they say, well, white people are also enslaved, and Arabs and everybody else kept slaves. But I don't know how many race-based slavery systems there were, but the US one was probably the biggest and the worst, or one of the biggest and the worst. I don't know. But so, that kind of defense doesn't really work. Everybody has slavery. Well, when the slavery is based on race, and it's one race owning another race, that's about as bad as it gets on principle. But that, of course, took, absurd heights when the Holocaust happened. Slavs, Gypsies, Roma, Jews, disabled, gay people, all killed. And that kind of categorization, that kind of rows and columns, that kind of pigeonholing required race science. It required a rationalistic, mathematical way of looking at the world, right? Where you assign value, you look at people as you reduce people's qualitative complexities to their quantitative simplicities. And people don't really talk about this much, but it's not just science and technology that is really a culprit in modern barbarism and atrocities, but it's also mathematics. This framework of reducing everything to sets. Everyone is a value. Everyone has a certain value. You're a variable in a function. You're ranked A, B, C, D, F. You're this kind of person, that kind of person, this type and that type. This is a very kind of autistic, rational way of looking at the world. And people don't really give credit to the fact that this itself is the cause of atrocity. A mathematical, rationalistic way of looking at the world. And so that's why I distrust science, engineering, mathematics, because as far as engineering is concerned, obviously you needed modern technology to create poisonous gas, rail, tanks, the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb, modern artillery, even today, all the way up to today, crypto, AI. Everybody can see why these are failures, because instead of elevating the human race, they're just degrading them. Crypto doesn't work. It's not a real economic system that works. Just look at how many so-called whales there are. Like almost every Bitcoin is held by tiny minority of holders. AI is just kind of dumbing people down, dumbing students down. It ruins education, pretty much. Of course, it can be used well, but it can also. But the problem that I pointed out before many times is that progress is like problems are like whack-a-mole. You whack one, other one comes up. Whack one, other one comes up. So there's no such thing as a solution. If a solution is perfect, it's not a solution. And so there are only degrees of failure. There are heuristics, and nowadays people have completely given up on solutions, right? People don't really live for solutions anymore. They live for heuristics. So, for example, again, instead of the legacy financial system, they believe in crypto. Instead of a liberal society where everybody can just put their differences aside, they went far left and far right, and they're gonna rock the boat. Eventually, it's gonna capsize. Instead of having a normal mind, everybody has to be quirky. Everybody has to have a mental illness. Nobody can eat a normal diet. Everybody has to be a vegan or a meat eater or low carb. Everybody has to be on pills of various kinds. So normality in the modern world has disappeared. Everybody has to be extreme. It's a world of extremeness, extremity. And I think, sorry, if you understand the nature of progress, you'll see that that's exactly what's bound to happen. But I kind of threw a lot in there. The point I was going to make is that it's you start off as an innocent creature, as a child, not as a savage, but as an innocent creature. And if anything, then you're made a savage. Or if not a savage, then, a sucker for society. You're grease for society's gears. You're made to push the wheel. But if you push the wheel, that means other people will get run over, right? So pushing the wheel is not innocuous. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to point this out. But even just to have a modern humane society, you need to have a lot of how to put it, sacrificial lambs, like the 800,000 people who give up, who check out of the game each year. Those people wouldn't be where they are without modern society. Modern society has created almost all problems. I don't think flatfoot used to exist. I don't think people used to wear glasses. I don't think they used to have depression or ADHD or autism. I think these are pretty much all modern inventions. Pretty much every problem is a modern invention. And if you tell me, well, the reason why people didn't used to have many of these problems is because they died early. Maybe it was better to die early. Today, we're kept alive artificially. And I don't know about you, but I hate that idea. I hate the fact that I have to be kept alive in an artificial way. I hate putting on glasses because my vision is blurry. I hate having to take pills, which I will have to do probably for a while. I hate the fact that society made me lazy and fat because it made me stressed, made me anxious. So I ate too much. Right over there, I have not a treadmill, but like a stationary bike, and it's just so absurd. You can't walk outside. You're gonna use a stationary bike, pretend to bike. It's bizarre. This century is the century of the self. The 21st century is the century of the self. And the biggest indicator of that is how much we masturbate, right? Masturbation is kind of an apt analogy to what we do. And it's not selfishness. We're not selfish per se. We're just isolated and kind of doomed because of climate change, because of the bad economy, because of wars, because of a lack of hope, addictions of all kinds that are all products of modern civilization. So, I saw this guy on YouTube who said it was basically the fault of the baby boomers, they're the laziest generation, they did this, they did that. I think that's narrow-minded. I think it's just the general thrust of what we call history. It's just the way that it works. This is the way that it's bound to work. So, to go back to Carlo Mikkelstatter, my favorite philosopher, he already predicted in the early 1900s that technology will destroy man. That technology will atrophy our capacities, He compared a person who was riding on a train to a person who was riding on horseback. And he said that the person who's riding on horseback is free. He has complete control. He can control the horse with, quivers in his body, to kick the horse and to make it move the way it wants, the way he wants. Who can, scale mountains up and down, live freely. He compared that authentic life to, the person on the train who is having an argument with the conductor about ticket prices, and if the engineer makes a single mistake, the train engineer driver makes a single mistake, then they are going to die on the train. So he has no control over his destiny anymore. And that's kind of an example, but it's also kind of an analogy to what modern technology produces. It produces this kind of passivity and helplessness. So this was kind of already argued by people over 100 years ago. It's not the baby boomers' fault. It's just the way the world is. I mean, we all know that if you progress a country, there won't be enough people, and then you have to import immigrants, and that's going to be a problem, because it's going to be a problem of integration. Going to be a problem of we don't like them and they don't like us, and stuff we already have examples of. So this might end up badly. In fact, it's hard to see how it wouldn't end up badly, to be honest. I'm not against immigrants. I have nothing against them. I think we're all stuck in the Squid Game. Squid Game is a really good analogy to reality. We're all playing the Squid Game. We all have to kill each other to win. That's the game we're playing. And so I don't blame them for playing the game. But I think it's pretty obvious that it's gonna fuck with the cohesion. It's gonna fuck with the normal functioning of things. I only think we deserve it. We made the bed and now we're laying in it. We're all part of the global system. We're all part of genocide or colonial history. What people can't seem to comprehend is everything we have on the backs of other people. Not just from today, but all the way back to the dawn of civilization. You have what you have because somebody has died, so because somebody has worked, because somebody has broke their back. The place where you live was probably conquered. Or maybe your country had slaves, or it colonized the country, or it traded with a slaver country. Like even countries that didn't hold slaves, I'm sure they still traded with countries that did hold slaves. So we're all part of the problem. We're all part of the global system. I mean, some countries are really rich. They have a lot of natural resources, like Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. But because of its geopolitical situation, the way it works, it's just totally fucked. And that's not because Africans have bad genes. It's just the way that it works. It's because Africa was colonized, and the modern economy, the modern world, doesn't do much to save these people. Doesn't do much to give them, I don't know, cheap debt. It doesn't give them enough aid. It exploits the shit out of them. Apparently there's a lot more money coming out of the global south than flowing in. So we're obviously, I once had this argument with this guy, and he would argue like, But the reason why these countries are so poor is because they have low productivity. And I was young when I had this debate, so it kind of stumped me. But now I would respond, well, okay, but doesn't explain why they have low productivity. And so, that measure doesn't mean much to say, well, Switzerland has high productivity, so that means it proves that, white Europeans are somehow more industrious. But in reality, the rich countries work less than poor countries. Europeans work the least in the world by hours. They're not the most industrious, they're more effective because they have better equipment, better educated people. So that kind of mathematical reduction doesn't explain why the asymmetry of productivity, why some countries have low GDP and why they barely produce anything. Well, it's not because of their fucking genes. And it's the only two options. Only two options. Either it's in the genes or it's the environment. If it's in the genes, that just means you're racist. You're just kind of a scientific racist, but you can't justify it because scientific reductionism doesn't work. It cannot explain environment just to say, well, it's in the genes. You could never prove that because the environment is always impressing on us. So, that's kind of an inspiring message for, Jordan Peterson would say, well, the reason why the explanation for the wage gap is that, women like people and men like things, and when you like things, that makes you more money than when you like people. But it completely ignores artificial, gender expectations and demands. He just pretends that it's all biology. And that's the eternal kind of contradiction of right-wingers that I've pointed out, is that on the one hand, they want to be, evangelicals and Christians and, God imbued us with an infinite soul, and, you can't reduce us to, biological matter because we're more special than that. But when it comes to bigotry, which is what it is, I don't care if you think that word is woke. But when it comes to hating on trans people, for example, then they demand a biological definition of what a woman is. They reduce the woman to her biological functions as a baby-making machine. So, but this argument kind of fails because it doesn't take into account that the environment is paramount. Because we live in an environment that is always susceptible to change, we can never know the limitations that we have. We can never know if women are somehow predisposed to like people and not things. You'll never be able to prove it because the environment is always adapting to, the organism always adapts to environmental pressure. So we could imagine a future where women are much more into computer science, let's say, or physics, because that has been normalized in society. And these right-wing freaks can't refute that. They can't. We do have a limit and scope. Chomsky says that as organic creatures, we have to have natural abilities, a scope and limit, but we can't know where that limit is, I would argue, because the environment is always open. And it's not really absurd, because on this planet, fish have evolved into mammals. All kinds of creepy, weird shit has happened. Like in seahorses, it's the males who give birth, not the females. And even humans are now kind of merging with machines. So it's kind of, it's like people don't have much imagination. Um, and, it's like, I want to talk about the hate for trans people, for example, because the reason why I am pro-trans is not because I'm woke. It's because I see through the bullshit. It's because I know that these are just people who are born with a certain circumstance, and they just want to be happy, and it's just another part of the human predicament to be born into a circumstance that isn't favorable to you. And just the fact that people are going to hate you for it. You're born trans, you have a need to change your body, perfectly normal thing. I mean, people have all kinds of body image issues, they have all kinds of diseases and disabilities and mental illnesses. This wouldn't be anything new. uh, so the fact that just the fact that you're born with this condition and you have to suffer because people have decided that they need to hate you, right? So I can see through it as a kind of a societal imposition that they don't see you as human, they see you as you know uh, a, a T word. I won't say the slur, but it's like I can see it as a clear example of human insanity, where they pick a group of people that you're supposed to hate, and that's just their scapegoat. Like Jews, that's just the scapegoat. White replacement. Whereas in reality, it's white people's fault that they're being replaced. They're being replaced because they've dominated other countries, they've developed quickly, and when that happened, when they develop too much, and when you develop too much, you actually stop having kids in your country. That's an observable fact, an observable trend everywhere. The more developed the country, the fewer children are born. And so you can put that on Jews. It's not the Jews who are whispering in people's ear and don't have kids. It's just a natural tendency. The more intelligent an animal, the fewer kids it has. This runs through the entire animal kingdom. There are fast breeders and slow breeders. And humans, intelligent humans, are at the top of that hierarchy. The most intelligent people just don't have kids. And that means that intelligence is the opposite of life. There's a kind of dark enlightenment, to steal the term, where we are becoming more intelligent as humans are understanding, more sophisticated, deeper thinkers. But look at the price that has to be paid for that. Depression, anxiety, too much self-awareness, ADHD, OCD. I mean, what is that? ADHD is obviously just too much, too much stimuli. I can't do that. OCD, oh God, I have to go to work. I have to pay this bill. I think these are engineered by society. Maybe even autism, to an extent, is engineered by society. I think when it comes to autism, it's probably deeper, because I read Dazai, so I know what it's like to be nearly 100 years ago, and he was already autistic. But a lot of these illnesses are obviously socially constructed, or at least they're socially they're aggravated by society, by modern society. In fact, that's what Mark Fisher's work is about. That he said in Capitalist Realism, it might be that depression is caused by your neurology, or something in your neurons is not working properly. But that doesn't explain what causes the neurons to not work properly, right? There needs to be a societal explanation for that. So you see, the neurological or genetic explanation just isn't enough. because it doesn't explain what causes the genes to be that way, or what causes your neurology to be that way. What is fucking up the computer, the mother, the the video card, or the GPU or the CPU. What is fucking with it? You know, you can't just explain that on the level of tiny atoms and molecules and genes and DNA. You can't do that. That's just not enough, because it still needs to be explained what causes the small stuff to behave the way that it does. What causes your neurological structure to deplete in joy chemicals, whatever those are called. And so there needs to be a social explanation. And so, yeah, that's where we are. I've terrible tangent. Not what I expected, but yeah, just a lot of thoughts. But yeah, so what I was talking about is, yeah, just the nature of progress, right? I was talking about the nature of progress, and ended up at the idea that, yeah, I went to AI, I went to trans people. But so the problem is that we live in an open world, a contingent world. We don't know what's going to happen. But we do pretty much know for certain that, like we could plan for a better future, but we choose not to. Right? So I'm not a complete relativist, and I'm not a solipsist or any of that stuff. I think we do have kind of a nature. We do have inbuilt desires like honesty. I think most of us want fairness and justice. The problem is that even though that's the case, these innate desires are then messed with. The cables are all, turned upside down, and the blue one is connected to the red one, and the pink one is connected to the green one, and it gets all fucked up. The cable's all tangled. And so even though I think we do have a fundamental nature, this nature is kind of turned on its head. And I think what is to blame is society, civilization, progress. When we were children, we were kinder and more open-minded, adventurous, honest, authentic. It's after that. It's after the tooth fairy stage is over with. If you don't know what that means, you should watch the first part of the series. It's after that stage is over with that the real fun begins. I'm not saying children are perfect, but they're clearly much better than adults. Even their cruelty is much smaller. So yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that, when I was talking about U.S. slavery, I said that it was kind of uniquely bad. But, it's not necessarily the race part of it that's uniquely bad, because that was present in other places too. It's when you combine the variables of it, right? Like the sheer number of the slaves, 4 million at the height of it. The conditions on the ships to the Americas were terrible. The fact that it lasted 250 years. Even the fact that it was supposed to be, the enlightened Europeans and white people who were doing it, right? And Christians who were doing it, not these fucking, backward people somewhere else. The fact that it was hereditary. So, born a slave, you died a slave. You know, there are many things that, the explicit racial hierarchy, one race particularly owning another. This kind of justification was pretty unique because, again, like I said, race was basically invented after the Enlightenment. So this was kind of an added element of cruelty there that was not replicated in many other places. I mean, even in the colonies in the Belgian Congo, even that system was apparently more benign than the U.S. system because it wasn't purely based on racial hierarchy, and it wasn't just chattel slavery, whereas in the U.S. it was just chattel slavery, and many slaves would be released. In the U.S., I think almost none of them were released, right? It was really hard for those slaves to be released. And then, to buy your own freedom. I haven't researched this, but the point is, it was a particularly brutal system of slavery that to an extent even exists today, because in the US it's legal to make prisoners work, even for no money. So, the history of the US is brutal. Even, after slavery became illegal, it still persisted in different kinds of ways. Black people have been oppressed for so long in the US. So yeah. So I hope you don't mind some background noises. As you can see, it's the AC running. The reason why my blood pressure might be high is because it's just really hot. I never really did well with heat. So I'm, it's whipping my ass this every year, pretty much worse than the last. It's didn't used to be this hot. So yeah, just another reason to be pessimistic about things is that, oh shit, I'm gonna have to survive climate change. I mean, you should know that thousands of people die already from heat death, heat strokes, overheating. In Europe alone, every year, pretty much thousands of people die. Not every year, but just about. So, and nobody seems to even point that out, that in the past couple of years, tens of thousands of Europeans died. This is the most developed place in the world, especially in the south. People are dropping like flies. So if you're a little bit weak, if you're a little bit immunocompromised, they're coming for you. And it's obviously just gonna be worse 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I don't think I'm gonna make it very long. I think stress kills a lot of people too. So, and I just have so much stress, I'm probably not gonna make it. But it's okay. I'm actually jealous of the people who just drop dead of like a stroke or heart attack or something like that. Because you hear about these people who just die in their sleep. Well, it just sounds to me like a good deal. Just drop dead, no problem. It's life that scares me, not death. It's the injury part that's bad. Dazai said too, we're no longer human. It's being dead never scared me. It's being injured. No thanks. True. nothing to. I mean, more and more, I'm more convinced that death is just a relief, and it's life that we're afraid of. It's the anxiety. It's the. Like just now, I was thinking about how before I was born, right? For all, I avoided every single atrocity. So like I could have been a slave, could have been whipped, um, you know, with a bullwhip, or that cat. I think it's called like a 9-tail whip. I don't know, something like that. 9 of tail whip. That slave masters would use to whip their slaves. Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, so yeah, I avoided all of those problems, just by not having been born. And now, for a couple of decades, we're here, struggling, but it's gonna end. That's the good part. Because the happiness is good too, but yeah, not everybody gets to have that. So, yeah, whatever. The point is that I should go back to talking about this topic. But it's kind of a broad topic. So, kind of to connect everything together. There was a movie called Ikiru. That means to live in Japanese, Ikiru. And in that movie, this guy is diagnosed with, I think, cancer. I don't remember. I think it's probably cancer. But for some reason, in those days in Japan, it was the previous period of Japan. Yeah, I don't want to push it out of my ass, but I think it's called Showa period. I don't know. Maybe something like that. And kind of in the mid 1900s, I think. Yeah, I don't know which period that is. The point is, he's diagnosed with cancer, but for some reason it was normal for, doctors in Japan to, at least in the movie, to lie about it. And so they would just tell you, hey, you have a cold, but he knew that he was dying, but for some reason they would tell him, oh, it's no worries, it's just a cold or whatever, something like that. It's just an infection, don't worry. Some reason, they probably because they couldn't cure it. They would just lie about it. And that just reminded me of me, because people would tell me, it's not a big deal. There's hope. There's I don't know. There's something you can do. There's medicine. There's therapy. And I immediately connected that in my head to this movie, because it feels like they're also lying. There's a lot of lying going on. Everybody can be saved. There's always a second chance. Always hope. And it's just kind of bullshit. And that could connect to this. So I really have cancer, so to speak. We're all doomed, essentially. I mean, I'm just dragging it out. I'm obviously sick in many ways. I'm not gonna last very long, probably. So I'm just dragging it out. But they tell you, no. It's what it is. But I just this idea that you have to take your blood pressure and just It just feels like I don't want to concentrate on that. I don't want to keep thinking about being sick. Um, but if you don't, you might just get even worse. So it's just this, life gets you. It puts you in this predicament. And, you can sort of think of it as kind of an abuser or like a game, no? Where, okay, it has all these things, cancer, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, hepatitis D, I don't know, stroke, fat all around your organs, death, destruction, all that. But it's only within the scope of life. So if you can somehow understand that, if you can somehow get rid of the game, and then it doesn't have any grasp on you. It doesn't have any clamp on you. So it's kind of this bizarre feeling where, I just feel like it's an abuser, it's a game. But it's almost like an option. Like, it's almost like, why can't I just go to some other game? Why does it have to be this game where there's cancer and hepatitis C and all that stuff? I don't remember if it's hepatitis B or hepatitis C. I have put a lot of information in my head and then I don't remember it. But I have this compulsion to repeat everything. That's why I do this. Yeah, I mean, so this guy on YouTube I just saw yesterday, he had cirrhosis, and he said that his esophagus, stuff in your throat, wouldn't relax when he would inject food or water. That's like a condition, And I just thought about, this argument of intelligent design. Is that what you call intelligent design? Let's intelligently design your throat in such a way so that it doesn't work properly sometimes for no reason, just because, why not? I mean, there's a gazillion reasons to say this is not intelligent design. But, I could shit on religion forever. I mean, none of it makes any sense, obviously. It's kind of tired or I don't have particular respect for atheists. They're kind of boring and stupid. But, it's like, obviously none of it makes any sense. The idea that Jesus, Christ was resurrected, and it's like, we're all going to be resurrected according to Christianity. We're all going to hell or heaven. So what makes Jesus's resurrection special if we're all essentially going to be resurrected? Oh, I just had this thought, like, why would you want to go to a church? It's such a creepy old empty room. Like, what the fuck? It's just, and that's somehow, the objective truth. It's objectively good to be in this old fucking room that has too much space in it, and there's too many ornaments, and it's a waste of time and money. And I mean, none of it could possibly make any sense. Or why you would want to be in heaven forever? Like, they even get that part wrong. Where it's like, you need to learn how to die. You can't just keep going forever and ever. There's no point to it. And somehow God wouldn't be smart enough to figure that out. That going on forever and ever is absurd and retarded and crazy and pointless. You need to have a beginning, mid, end, like a story has a rising tension, payoff, cool down. But this can't even get the story straight. Obviously the problem of evil we don't have to talk about. I mean, not even close, right? Let's make a universe and almost all of it is empty garbage, and then make one planet where 70% of it is enormous waters with monsters in it, and you drown, and you starve, and Animals rip each other to pieces to live, and they die of frost, of whatever, heat or cold or lack of food or lack of water or parasites. Let's make a world where people enslave each other for thousands of years, and it's in the Bible too, and it's justified in the Bible. And in the Quran, it's you can fuck a 6-year-old if you would like to, or at least you can marry one and then fuck them maybe 4 years later. I don't know, but it's just God came down and he just said, I'm gonna make it Arabic. I'm gonna make it so that only bearded brown people in the Middle East care about it. But that's the objective truth. It couldn't possibly be true. Even the Bible had to be translated. God couldn't figure out that it would be English, that English would be the Franca lingua, whatever the fuck that's called. The official language of the world. Couldn't figure that out. That's pretty stupid. Even this idea of the Tower of Babel, right? That we have, I think it's about the fact that we have so many languages, and it's like, yeah, why do we have so many languages? It's just a pain in the ass. It's just about, the fact that English is the official language, but only like a few 100 million people speak it as their native language. Everybody else has to learn it, and so we all butcher it because it's really hard to speak a second language. And it's like, well, that's just so intelligent design. Just make a language official that only like 5% of the world speaks natively, then make everyone else learn it, which is very hard. Of course, it couldn't possibly make any sense. But this is a kind of a waste of time because, it's not going to fix anything if I say this, right? Gods or no gods, God couldn't solve any problem even if he existed. Right? It's another kind of catch-22 that all problems that we know have been solved by human beings, but all the problems that haven't been solved could be solved by God, but he doesn't. So the only evidence there is God is useless. But again, I'm sorry for being 10, 15 steps ahead on every argument. It's kind of, what do religious people have? Just defining God into existence. It has to exist because how can you have reason without God? How can you have complexity without God? But okay, they don't know anything about engineering, because it's actually simplicity that's good. And the universe is filled with complex bullshit that doesn't need to even exist. It serves no purpose. God would engineer everything simply. But our brains are extremely complex, and everything is kind of extremely complex. So it's like, if the world was really smooth and simple, then it might be God. It might be, it's not, but it's still not an engineer. Because an engineer would make it flow properly. It wouldn't, it wouldn't not let your esophagus relax to take in food. That's a bug that should be fixed. This is not exactly a profound engineer here. So it's just, you could go on and on and on. Oh yeah, and this idea that you need to ground reason on God. I find that really bizarre, for one, because, because religion is like the #1 source of stupidity. It's filled with, of course, it's filled with, nonsense. So it's really bizarre to say it comes from this source, like reason comes from this source, ultimate good and intelligence comes from this source, where every piece of evidence shows us it's the opposite. that it's the nihilistic, atheistic cynics who tend to be the best people. That's another point I've made before. It's like, I've noticed that, George Carlin, whatever, these nihilistic, cynical atheists actually have the kind of the softest souls, It's not these God, Bible thumping people that have the softest souls. They don't have profundity. They don't have, no, it's just so it doesn't make any sense. Right? Clearly, if you really want a good, honest, kind soul, it would be somebody who doesn't believe that he's the creation of a perfect being who will go to heaven. That's not the kind of person a kind person is. Kind person is someone who says, well, I'm just here but for a short while, and I'm not perfect, and I wasn't created perfect. I'm not going to heaven. I'm not doing it because God said it was a good idea. I'm doing it because I think it's a good idea, and because I have empathy. And I'm gonna die, and it's all gonna be over. And I'm kind of a piece of shit. I mean, and I don't think my group is special. I'm not gonna go to heaven while somebody else is in hell. So they don't get any of it right. But yeah, so I was just thinking about this kind of universal consciousness. This, like we have so much to learn from each other. Like the Chinese guerrilla warrior that I was mentioned in the beginning, who stood before the kind of row of Japanese soldiers. The other guys that I mentioned, some of them are black, some of them were, what are they, Arabic? I don't know. Like Lafayette Blaze was Pakistani. To me, that's kind of inconceivable. I don't know what that is really. It's I don't even know if it's an Arab. I don't know, no fucking clue. But he was a Muslim for sure. It's a Muslim country. Yeah, so everybody is different. I've learned from Jews. I learned from black people. I've learned from a Chinese woman. I've been inspired by all kinds of people, by anyone. Fat, thin, anyone. So I just kind of had this feeling of like, the universal consciousness is in us. It is not in God. It's worthless. You can be inspired by a fat white woman, even though you have nothing to do with her. Can be inspired by anyone, anywhere. You can, see through the bullshit. Oh, he's fat. Oh, he's this, he's that. It doesn't really matter. They cannot inspire you. They cannot teach you something. They cannot help you. So it's all bullshit, And that's one reason why I don't believe in these anti-Semitic conspiracies that are so popular now because of Israel. Let me just take Switzerland, for example. Switzerland is known for its banking industry. Imagine that, I checked it, and that country is like 0.2% Jewish, at least by religion. Almost everybody there is white. Most people that are white. Then there are a bunch of immigrants, but Swiss people are white. Now imagine all the jokes, the conspiracies, the canards, if that was a Jewish country, right? But when white people do it, well, who cares? That's because they're civilized. When Jews do it, it's because they're conspiring. So it's, you can always see the double standards, the bullshit. The people whose job it is to apologize for, downplay their crimes, the crimes of their country. Like in my own country, it's pretty authoritarian now. And, Orban, the prime minister, wannabe dictator, has, built this total network of right-wing sycophants who throat the cock of Putin and Trump on every opportunity, and you have to happen to catch a glimpse of the TV, and it's just they're always saying the same shit, these people have no souls. Like I'm around a bunch of people who have just no souls. They have no authenticity at all. They will just say anything for some money and some recognition and some power. Entertainers who will pretend instead of be what they are. It's just all so shallow and stupid. Giving people attention just because they look good. Like, this is kind of a self-tell, because whatever videos come up on your feed is just a reflection of what you watch. But I see these dancing girls, short pants, typical stuff. Their midsection showing, and they're really cute, but it's like the only reason they're being watched is because they're cute. It's like there's just something so dishonest about that. It's so disgusting that if they were not cute, nobody would pay them any attention. And the fact that they have to acquiescence to that. They have to, they know they're cute. So they have to acquiescence to that and give the people what they want. And then this slow process of growing old as a woman must be terrible, because you're really cute for about 20 years, maybe 30 years. But after that, don't pretend otherwise. It's all going downhill pretty fast. A woman who looks sexy at 25 looks like shit at 35. They're desperately trying to fix it up, make up, all that shit. And it just doesn't work. I mean, if men were honest, they would say, oh yeah, I would like the 15-year-old over the 35-year-old, but they can't say it. And most of them would, if you take away the ethical concerns. It's just, so, it's like, I don't think men are pedophiles per se, but they're kind of pedophilic. And that's just another element, is that, well, that's bad, and you can't even say it, because then it's your fault somehow. And we all know it's true. I mean, I could go into that too, but it's like, I mean, the reason why we have age of consent laws is because men would fuck all the kids if we didn't. So I've had this idea that, laws are always a self-tell. The reason why we have laws against killing and stealing and looting, and every single fucking law that we have, is a reflection of our failure. Because we know if society is full of people who break those laws. And eventually everyone would break them, probably. Because the more laws are broken, it's kind of cumulative and exponential. So don't just think, oh, it's just a couple of bad apples that would. No, some of them would, and all of them would. So George Carlin has this bit about, it's really probably his best bit, where he talks about, we're barely out of the jungle on this planet. That's the name of it. You should look at it. And he says, imagine if the electricity went down, and out would come our old friends. Yeah, it's true. It would not be, oh, let's all come together. No. I think eventually it would be Squid Game, survival game. Eventually. And it's kind of miserable and sad that we always have to kind of push that down and pretend it isn't there, Like, you always have this trope in movies and TV shows where you can push someone down, don't want them to be seen. Oh yeah. And we're just playing between life and death, and my blood pressure was too high, then it was too low, and then it's like I'm just sailing, I'm just bouncing back and forth between death and death. Oh, that's just so much fun. Every time, everywhere you go. Am I gonna break my leg? Am I gonna get trafficked? Am I, you know, and this stuff, it doesn't hit you until it happens, but like almost, I can find like a dead person, like someone who died from like any direction around me, you know. There was a person who died there, person who died there, person who died there, a person who died over there. An 18-year-old girl was struck by a train a couple of years ago, and I was fucked up. I said to my dad, "Can I go and see the blood?" You know, like I was just sort of half kidding, but you know, probably was just processing the pain of it. Well, fuck, how do I respond to this? You know, but you know, it's just your grandma dies of, you know, she suffered for years of dementia, like probably like 5 years of dementia. And so I was gonna connect this to the assisted suicide topic that you know, because you know, just I saw it, you know, recently being talked about, and yeah, just obviously just another one of these problems where it's perfectly rational to have it. It would be better to die at that point, but we say no. In most countries, we say no. But you know, it's like I wouldn't even want to do it that way because it seems very depressing to me. Go through the paperwork, get, you know, checked by doctors after doctor after doctor after doctor, and it would never clear me because I've been to the psychiatry. There's no way they would clear me at all, even if it was legal. And I wouldn't want it because I just find the idea so depressing. Not that I want to take away the right from other people, but I personally find it so depressing. Okay, lay down, take the poison. It's like, it's just, that's just not it for me. You know, it's just, I guess I watch too much AOT. You know, it's just, you know, like Mishima, the Japanese novelist, would say, like, I'm afraid of dying of cancer, particularly. Like he wanted to go out with a bang. That's why he organized the coup against the fucking government. I think it was the government, right? He and his far-right nationalist youth group occupied, I think, a government building, and then it failed miserably, and then he died of seppuku, slashing his own stomach, but some other guy had to do it for him, and it was kind of a gruesome thing. But it's still better than dying slowly of cancer, because at least you had no say in your own birth. Then at least let you have a say in your own death. It makes sense. It equals the playing field. You know, it's tit for tat. I don't know. It's just black and white. Yin and yang. Makes sense. Keep saying it forever. But you know, it's just, there's so many topics I can get to them all. But it's just you know, yeah, it's just, I've been reading about you know, you can't even necessarily, even if you jump from a height, you could fuck it up, and you could, you know, if you don't do it right, you're just paralyzed or something. And sometimes you don't even die. Apparently, you don't necessarily die on impact. You kind of slowly bleed out. So, you know, it's just, you can't even, you're trapped in life, you're trapped in trying to escape life. Then in a way, you're trapped in death too. Because like there's nothing to do, you're just dead. It's like, well, that's kind of sucky. I mean, that's kind of, you would sort of expect something to happen, no? Like, I don't think you can totally be at peace with being dead because you're like, oh, I want to do something else. I want to, you know, I want to accomplish something. I want to go back and play, you know. So I guess I'm not enlightened enough to just say, oh, there's nothing bad about it. It just seems like kind of a waste to just, oh, you're dead? Okay. I probably could have just, you know, left that body, woken up in some other body, started doing something else. So that might just be the fear of death. More enlightened people would say, oh, you're dragging it out, you're being delusional. To be honest, I'm a pretty undecisive person. So I can't really make up my mind too much. I always tend to think there's multiple ways of looking at something, and more than one of them could be valid, and people don't really tolerate that well. In society, always, like I was arguing with this guy in the comments that I banned, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to call myself an anti-natalist, because I don't like labels, but I agree with the philosophy. So I was going back and forth, and yeah, it's just the simple-minded fuck just wouldn't understand that some people are more complicated and they don't have surefire certain answers, locked down. Fail safe, that would be the word. People want perfection are dumbasses. They don't get, there always has to be a flaw. Like the character B2, it's a really hot character. I think her name is 2B, like 2B. She's really sexy, but she has like a mole on her chin. And, Zizek already explained that, well, not talking about 2B, but somebody else. Well, that's actually good, because if she was too perfect, that wouldn't be good enough. You need to have some imperfection, a double chin or whatever, because otherwise it's just, just a regular dude. That ain't good enough. You want some fucked up shit. But yeah, some other guy, the other guy I banned, the two people I banned. This guy was an antinatalist too. But he was annoying me, so leaving stupid comments, so I banned him. And he said, you believe a lot of unproven stuff. And I've been thinking about that for a while. I'm like, well, yeah, that's what philosophy is, It's like, you just want me to repeat commonplaces? Just be certain about everything. Oh, yes, and then this is what we call a chair. This is what we call a table. And this is what we call DNA. Like, you cannot live on just pure facts. It's useless. You need to somehow get outside of pure facts and do some conjectures and philosophy. Otherwise, you're just repeating what is already known. It's like I don't get people. I feel like I live on a different planet or something. They want perfection, completion. They just want to repeat what they already know. They're racist. They think they're special. They think it makes sense to go to church or go to heaven. When I was in church, I was the only one who wouldn't fall on his knees in the pews. I was like 10 years old. I'm like, what? I didn't want to do it. I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? What is this shit? And I don't think that makes me special. I'm just saying, it just sounds to me like bullshit. Like, why do you people believe this bullshit? But I'm not trying to be special. I might be, but I'm not trying to be. Like I just have, like, free will, for example. But listening to debates on free will, and it's like, yeah, obviously you need the cause for something to happen. That means you're not free. How could you just will yourself into the right answer? That doesn't make any sense. You can't just believe 2 + 2 is 4. You have to be convinced of it because of a series of deductive steps. So how could it make sense to be free? What would fuck, all these stupid concepts that come from religion, soul, nobody can find it, free will, nobody can find it. the essence of humanity, the essence of society. Nobody can find those either. Even the idea of a self, I don't know what that is. Maybe I'm a self, maybe I'm not, but it doesn't really matter because I'm clearly just a bunch of, heart pumping blood, neurons firing to make thoughts, reacting to environmental pressure, like it's getting cold and reacting to it, ooh, itchy, or like goosebumps. And you can call that a self, but it's just, who cares? There's nothing there. It's just a bunch of kind of vaguely connected thoughts and feelings that can range significantly. So yeah, you can call it a self, but you can sort of feel that you're disconnected, right? I mean, the reason why we have society, and here we might approach the subject of society, is because you don't want to disappear, right? You don't want to fall away. So it's like, why do we like the idea that there's a post office and that you can go to the post office and you can give them your ID and they will give you a package that they couldn't pick up, so they take it to the post office. That's another topic, is just what a waste, what a waste of, like I get some disability money, a small amount, and they give it to you. For some reason it comes on a check, so when you can't go out to meet the postman, they're just gonna transfer it, and then you have to walk over there, and waste of time, waste of energy, waste of resources. Should all be digital by now. And then what's really annoying is they give you change, like part of the disability money is change. It's not like an even number, like 200. No, it's 165 25 cents or something. Translating it, not translating it, but converting it, because it's in my country's currency, but it's a small amount of money. But it's really annoying, like, oh, they just throw some change, like some chump change at you, and you're like, oh, you have to like, it's so embarrassing. They can't even care about disabled people enough to say, like, okay, we're not gonna humiliate you by giving you fucking change. Like you're some beggar, you need change. That really pisses me off. They give you change, and even the money should be like, there's no reason why it shouldn't be like 3 times as much as it is, given how hard it is to get it. They don't just give these away. But yeah, so the idea that we need to have these concepts of society, the policeman, the post office, and the rest of them. You can list words forever. Just for me, difficult, because I love words, so I could list words for 1,000 years. I just like saying words. But it's you can easily see how it's just a way to keep you in the game, keep you from falling away and disappearing into nothing, keep you away from the void. That's kind of the theory of Mikkelstatter again, that we have these common conventional words, that we use to kind of attach ourselves to reality. So this is like a bottle, and we have a whole sophisticated system of names, but it's just a way to give our nothingness some name, some identity, what he calls persona. So everything has a persona, everything has a meaning. You talk to someone, you have to say, hi, how are you? You have to say, oh, it's 7:15. It could be chaotic if it wasn't 7:15. You need to have a time. Imagine if we just took away the idea of time. There was no 7:15. Well, it would be chaos. So we just engineer these words. Of course, they could be completely natural, in the sense that they're part of our nature, but that doesn't really matter. The point is that make use of them to give ourselves a persona, so we're not disappearing into the void. We give ourselves a persona so we don't disappear into the void. And the more words you lose, the more you disappear into nothing. And we're afraid of it, of course. That's an old realization that, old understanding that we're scared of oblivion. But I don't think we have any rational reason to be other than, well, we're here, so we need to keep being here. But I don't think reason is strong enough to somehow ground the idea that we need to be here, or we need to do this, or we need to do that. You can easily conceive of it as an illusion. We just need to be here. We need to keep living. We need to. But there's no fundamental reason to. It doesn't mean there's no reason not to. There's also no reason to, like the stories that are invented, We have to keep building the city. We have to keep building the country. We have to keep, why? I never understood you can't really find an answer to that will satisfy. Why do we have to build the city? I don't know. We just have to, yeah. So I didn't really get to everything I needed to get to. So I'm gonna have to make a third part, and maybe that's gonna be more about culture. But I'm gonna have to speak a little bit more about society too. That's the plan. And then talk about more philosophical stuff, I guess, in the end. But yeah, I did get to. Yeah, it's kind of hard to grasp what I was saying, right? But I can't help it. It's not hard. It's not easy to put into words. Sorry, I don't know what to say. I can imagine somebody getting a panic attack because I say all this shit, but my justification for it is like, well, but it might console somebody too. So I see, and plus I want to be honest, so I see no reason not to say all this stuff that might sound pretty disturbing. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, do I give a trigger warning? Does it make any sense? Pretty sure if you put a sign of like don't jump, people still jump anyway. So it's like I don't really have. I'm not really asking you to do anything. I'm just the only thing I did ask is to be honest and to be a jester. But I'm so afraid of responsibility that I don't really want to take accountability for anything. I want to disappear into my own little world. But then I can't reach anything or anyone, right? So I'm kind of I feel compelled to say something to the public. But I'm terribly afraid of consequences. Like, I don't want to start any movement. I don't want to, inspire anyone to do anything. So I'm just saying what I'm thinking. Yeah, maybe the next video will be more structured. But yeah, I just had to get these thoughts out. Thanks. That's gonna be it for this one. I did make a couple of mistakes in the previous video, so I wanna just clarify that I was never an atheist. I never did call myself an atheist, though I said it. After Blaze, I called him a Muslim, but he wasn't a Muslim. I just meant he was culturally a Muslim. I also said that Mishima failed to complete the seppuku, but that's not the case. It's the guy who was supposed to behead him that failed to behead him. So another guy had to come in and finish the job. That's pretty much all the major mistakes I made. Sorry.